Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Disky Discussions. I'm your host, AB Basson. International editor at Soccer Laduma, David Kappel, is one of a handful of Bayer Leverkusen supporters in South Africa. While he's excelled in his craft, David's journey to where he finds himself today is as inspiring as much as it is unique. From how the 2010 FIFA World Cup assisted him in meeting his wife, to refereeing amateur matches for 30 rand a game, later playing a part in Bundesliga's return to our TV screens. This is a podcast you don't want to miss. Well, David, thanks for joining me on what was very short notice. I appreciate your time. For those who don't know, you're this international editor at Soccer Laduma. You've been there for quite some time. Your story of how you came to South Africa is very unique, but let me not spoil it for our listeners. Maybe you can tell us all about it.
Yeah, thanks, AB. Thanks for having me, on your show. As you say, my story, I don't think a lot of people know, I actually came from sort of a wrong choice of studies in Germany. I studied a subject called regional sciences, and I eventually finished it with a bachelor's degree, mixture of geography and business. But I didn't enjoy it at all. In the end, it was just, to get it finished, to get it over the line, to have the degree in my bag. But I still didn't know what to do afterwards, because it didn't go enough into detail in either of the two fields, to be an expert, to find a proper job. But luckily, as part of the studies, I needed to do an internship, as one of the requirements to finish it. And I found this NGO called Stars of Tomorrow. And Stars of Tomorrow were using HIV/AIDS education. We're using football for HIV/AIDS education in projects in South Africa. And that was around 2009, and just before the 2010 World Cup. So we were trying to build a bridge between the 2006 World Cup in Germany to the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, to get funding from companies in Germany, for the project in South Africa. And luckily, that was quite successful. We got a 2 million rand fund from a big organization in Germany for the project. And then 2010 came around, and I had never been in the project. In South Africa, I've been working from Germany. I've seen pictures and videos and stuff. But then they invited us to actually come to South Africa for the World Cup. And it was quite a ride, We were here for 10 days, my boss and I. We started off in the project, me coming to Africa for the first time, not knowing much about the culture and so on. Just by the time, young guy, didn't really know what to do, but, just enjoying the experience. So we started off in Johannesburg, we went to Pretoria, we went out in the township, dancing in the night with some guys from the projects. We went to Cape Town, where we bought tickets for the France Eurobag game on the opening day. We bought them on top of Table Mountain. So it was really an interesting time. We went, we watched the South Africa-Mexico game. We wanted to watch it on the fan mile, but the fan mile was full. So we went into some bar, and when South Africa scored, there weren't any chairs where I could sit on, so I was sitting on a table. So I jumped when South Africa scored, and I broke the table. So yeah, it was quite a funny time. Eventually, we went to Durban to watch the Germany-Australia game, which was a nice win. We went out that night, and that's where I met my now wife, and she's basically the reason why I came back to South Africa a year later, and why I'm still here.
Yeah, that's actually an incredible story. I've never heard that before. Incredible story. You talk about Shaba's goal. I think for all South Africans, it was an iconic moment. From an outsider, obviously a big German fan and German supporter. For Germany, it ended up being a disappointing World Cup, knocked out in the semifinals versus Spain. I remember that Puyol had a quite vividly. I think it was at Moses Mabhida Stadium. Obviously, like I've mentioned, a big German fan. How did that go down, and how disappointing was it, especially after, what happened 4 years prior back in Germany?
Yeah, I also remember that header very well because it broke my heart. By that time, funny enough, I was back in South Africa. I was here the first 10 days, and then I had to go back to Germany. But because I had met, this girl, and I was sort of, on that World Cup fever and everything, I sort of decided, okay, I have to come back and see whether it was, just a once-off thing or something more serious. So I was back at that time of the semi-final, and I had watched it in a local shabin with again some people from the projects up in Pretoria. But yeah, I was basically the only one that was like German, and everyone else wasn't really too interested in the game or in the outcome of the game. And I was shattered, because I felt this Germany team in 2010 played, phenomenal football. When you look at the games against England, against Argentina, and, there was the new exciting football that Germany were playing. And I feel they almost deserved, to win the 2014 World Cup. No, the 2010 World Cup more than, the 2014 one, which they eventually won. But it was still very interesting time and very nice memories for myself.
Yeah, most definitely. You joined Soccer Laduma as in, I think it was December 2013. So you've been there now quite some time. How did that come about, and how's the journey been thus far?
As other things in my life, it sort of came unexpected. At the time, so eventually in 2011, I came to South Africa to sort of settle here. I was working for our project for South of Tomorrow, the NGO that I mentioned earlier. But I was working at the University of Stellenbosch, where we had tried to build a partnership and go into the townships, of Stellenbosch and surroundings, where I was, trying to educate young teenagers to become like leaders in their community and use sport as a tool for HIV/AIDS education. But sadly, as many things in South Africa, there was some issues behind the scenes and some fraud involved, which not with my project, but where I was based at the university. And then everything was shut down, and I basically lost my job while having packed my bags from Germany and living here in South Africa. So there were a few uncertain times. I was doing like 2 part-time jobs. I was doing working as a referee for 30 Rand a game, so it was tough time, I won't lie. And at the same time, my now wife and I were expecting our first child, born in January 2014. So I was under pressure, to get something stable to build our family. So I saw this, I started following a lot of people in South Africa, football people in South Africa, because I've been a football fanatic since I grew up. I played in Germany myself in the 5th division, which is sort of semi-professional, but enough to pay your rent and your study fees. And I wanted to get involved in the South African football industry, but I didn't know how. So I just followed everyone that was talking football on Twitter. And I saw this sort of job advert from Soccer Clint, Clint Roper. And I didn't really match what they were looking for, but I thought, okay, let me just, apply and see where it takes me. And then I got invited for an interview. And they pretty soon found out that I'm actually not really suitable for that role, but because they were impressed with me and my football knowledge, my specifically international football knowledge. I, I, pre- I remember I prepared for the interview trying to, at least remember some of the Bafana players, some of the names, because I didn't have a clue about South African football at all at the time.
Yeah.
But I managed to, browse past the one or two local questions they asked me, but it was clear that, I'm a lot more suited for international football. And I think by the time someone was leaving Soccer Laduma that was doing the international football, and then they basically gave me a chance, and it has been an incredible journey since. I started as the sole writer for the international section, and I think in the first year or in the year before I came, international news on Soccer Laduma had around 35 to 40 million page views in a year, and then within the first 3 years, we managed to get it to 140 million page views.
Sure.
So that's obviously a massive increase.
Yeah.
And we could see, we tapped into something that a lot of South African and football lovers, were interested in. And, 7 years down the line, I had my 7-year work anniversary just last week. I'm basically now the international editor of Soccer Laduma and Kiko, and I have 3 writers below me and a sub-editor, and it's been going really well. Obviously, this year has also been challenging for us, with COVID and working from home and all those things, but we keep on pushing.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, obviously, I worked at Soccer Laduma for I think 15 months, and I got to see some of your work. And during that time, you've interviewed, during the past 7 years, you've interviewed some really prominent names in world football. If I could just think off the top of my head, Luis Figo, Patrick Kluivert, Lothar Matthäus. Which one really stands out for you? And if you had to choose one to do again, which one would you choose?
I'd say there's 2 that stand out for me. The one I still have as a pinned tweet on my Twitter profile is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, when he was still at Borussia Dortmund. It was for, I can't remember which edition. I think it was our 1000th edition for Soccer Laduma. And someone was saying, we need big names for that edition. And then no one at Soccer Laduma had interviewed someone like a current top player from a top 5 league. We often get chances to interview like your Kluivert, like you said, your Matthäus, legends that come, when the Bundesliga or La Liga come to South Africa for certain events, then we get access to the legends. But this one, I organized myself, from finding out the media person at Dortmund to explaining what I want to do, to sending the interview in German and in English. And eventually it worked out, and it was just before he left, the season before he left, to join Arsenal, when he was at his peak at Dortmund.
Yeah.
So I was really, really proud of that. And then the other one is Lothar Matthäus, because obviously I'm from Germany. He's the captain of the team that won the 1990 World Cup. He's a big legend in Germany, the player with the most games for the national team. So I got to meet him in person, actually, in Germany for the first interview. And right now, he is basically among my contacts, and if I want to comment from him, I don't know if you've seen, we did a tribute for Diego Maradona, and he has played obviously against him.
Yeah.
And he just he's a very, very open and kind guy. So unlike a lot of other people that that don't respond when you ask for interview, or that don't even say, no, I'm not available. They just don't answer your message. Even if he doesn't have time, he will always at least let you know. So, those are the two big ones that I'm proud of.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and great to hear from from one of the real legends of the game. Obviously, we've got Bundesliga football showing on our TVs again on SABC, and Soccer Laduma has a partnership with the Bundesliga. I'm led to believe that you had some part to play in that.
Yeah, I think I don't think a lot of people know, but I think it was around 4 years ago. Peter de Toit, the chief of Soccer Laduma, who's soon leaving us sadly. He has a friend that is a friend of the CEO of Bundesliga International. And then he got invited, to a media trip, but he couldn't go on it. So he sent me, but he said, don't just go there, to take nice pictures and use it as a holiday. And so, go there with the intention to build a partnership. And yeah, that's what I tried to do. I prepared, presentation for the guys in Germany of what Soccer Laduma is all about, and this rise in page views, in international interest that I spoke about earlier. And they were quite impressed, and they also wanted to, strengthen their footprint in Africa, South Africa again, because they were sleeping a little bit, in the late 90s and the early 2000s, where they lost ground, in particular the Premier League. Yeah. When I came to South Africa, I was surprised, how Premier League focused, like everyone is, everyone you speak to has a Premier League team, that they support: Manchester United and Liverpool, the big ones in South Africa, Arsenal, Chelsea. I was really surprised how much focus is on the Premier League versus, the other leagues. Me growing up watching Bundesliga football, I obviously that's where my first love is. But, La Liga with Messi and Ronaldo, there was also a lot of interest, which was actually one of the huge growing factors for us at Soccer Laduma, that we focused a lot on Messi and Ronaldo. But yeah, so after I presented what Soccer Laduma is about, they were keen on forming a partnership, and we've started that, I think, 4 years ago. So the guys from Bundesliga wanted to get on SATVs more. They were on Starsat, which is a prepaid service, but I think not a lot of people actually have it in South Africa or know about it in South Africa. I'm not the biggest fan of their marketing. So they obviously also asked our opinion. I said, if you want to reach the masses in South Africa, you have to go on SABC. Seemingly they couldn't go onto SuperSport because of their rights cycle, where they had sold, rights not just to South Africa, but Southern Africa. And they're doing a lot better, the Bundesliga, in countries like Ghana and Nigeria, where there's seemingly a lot more interest than in South Africa. But South Africa also has quite a strong Bundesliga following, and that's why. And I think that's what we see now, where they're back on SABC3. I'm happy, that they're back, and I'm happy they've played a small role, in them coming back on South African screens. So now I can also watch them. I remember I was at a meeting, 2-3 years ago with them at the SABC, offices and so on. So yeah, it's been, it's a little. It's also something that makes me proud, that I'm from Germany, and the German Bundesliga is back in South African screen. We also told them, in South Africa, if you want to reach the masses, you also need to look at influencers, and they started working with Robert Marava. And so, it's nice to see, that they're actually listening and taking some of the advice on board.
Yeah, you talk about the Bundesliga and the global footprint. That's the way all leagues seem to go. La Liga's got a presence in South Africa, and the Premier League seems to have always had a big presence in South Africa. What can the South African league learn from the way the Bundesliga market themselves?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think you definitely have to look at your own market first. You have to market yourself in your own country. And I think for for South Africa and other African leagues, it's not so much about, going into other countries, like for these big European leagues. Although it would be nice, to have the South African league on TV in Germany, but I think that side, there's just so much football, that it will be difficult to compete for South African football with the Bundesliga or with the Premier League, because also there's a huge difference in the quality, in my very humble opinion. And I know some people might like it, but with me, growing up watching Bundesliga and these days watching Premier League regularly on TV, and then when you switch to a PSL game, there's just there's still a huge gap in quality for my that I'm seeing. And I think also a lot of other people are seeing, and that's also where I think the PSL needs to work. Germany had a similar problem where they weren't doing well on international level around 2000 at the Euro 2002, and then they implemented their famous academy program, where it's now sort of a must for every Bundesliga 1 and Bundesliga 2 club to have an academy, and that's where you see them reaping the rewards, since the last few years, that 2014 World Cup winning generation, had the likes of Özil, the likes of Schweinsteiger, and a couple of others, who came all through the academies. And I think that's something that South African football PSL clubs, need to look a lot more at. It can't just be the focus on the first team and not so much on the youth. And when I say youth, it can't be from age of 15 or so. You need to start very young. You need to put the foundations in place for the players to become professionals. And you need to start with simple things. Learn how to pass, how to create space, and those type of things. So there's still a lot of things, I think, that the South African league, but also South African football in general, can learn, without losing the flair and everything that makes South African football exciting. Because that's not what I'm saying. But if you have the flair players, and if you have the kids that learn football in the streets, if you get them earlier into a proper structure, into proper coaching, that's another topic. By the way, the qualification of the coaches, I think that's also where South Africa still has to improve a lot. If you can get these things right, then the future can only be a lot brighter for South African football.
Yeah, most definitely. Obviously, you're very well acquainted to the Bundesliga, and you're a big Bayer Leverkusen fan. Over the years, there's not been a lot of South Africans that have played in the Bundesliga. Just off the top of my head, you think of guys like Delron Buckley and Steven Pienaar at Borussia Dortmund. Which are the best South Africans would you say that you can remember that played in the Bundesliga, or maybe I should say best Africans, if you think of guys like JJ Okocha, who made a big impact?
I mean, JJ, he's basically incomparable. He was in his prime when I was sort of in my teens, watching Bundesliga football every week, what he did at Eintracht Frankfurt at the time. And obviously, if you think of JJ, you think of his goal against Oliver Kahn, where he basically runs past the whole defense and then has Oliver Kahn on the floor once, twice, and scores, So he's one of the big African legends of Bundesliga. Also, JJ Yeboah, Antonio Yeboah, before he went to the Premier League, he also was great in the Bundesliga, very, very strong striker. But if I think of South Africa, obviously Pienaar comes to mind. But for me, I think the most successful one has to be Delron Buckley. I just wrote an article about him the other day, where it was his birthday this week actually, and we just recalled when he scored a brace against Bayern, with Arminia Bielefeld at the time. That was his best season in the Bundesliga. He scored 15 goals, but overall he's made over 200 appearances in the Bundesliga. I don't think any other player from South Africa comes close. And when you talk to him and when you hear what he had to go through because he went there at a young age. There was this cultural difference, and he made it, So I remember him. I remember seeing him playing, when I was still in Germany, and I was quite happy, how sort of his path developed, how he eventually went to Borussia Dortmund, a bigger club in Germany. And, it's also those things that make me proud, nowadays that through my job, I have the opportunity to speak to some of my childhood heroes. I had the opportunity to speak to JJ Okocha, when he came to South Africa for the Bundesliga Fest. I think it was 2 years ago. I had the opportunity to travel around with him. We visited Mamelodi Sundowns. We went out for supper. That's one of the perks that come, with the job. When I was young, I saw JJ Okocha on TV, and I decided not to go into football journalism in Germany. But somehow in the back of my mind, I always thought, wow, that's actually quite a cool subject, and would be nice to, one day write about football, because that's what I love. So, that it came this way, maybe not straightforward, maybe, via a few corners and jumping over a few stones. It's something that I think I can be proud of.
Yeah, most definitely. The FIFA Best Men's Player 2020, the 3 finalists have been announced for the FIFA Football Awards this year. Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, and then Robert Lewandowski. Do you think this is finally the year where, obviously we had Luka Modric, who pipped the 2 greats to the Ballon d'Or, what was it now, 2 years ago? But do you think Robert is the deserving winner? I mean, it's just incredible, his scoring rate for Bayern Munich.
He has to. If he doesn't win it this year, then he will never win it in his lifetime. If you just look at that Bayern Munich team and the role he played, they won the treble and they added another 2 trophies this year. He scored something like, I think it was 55 goals in 47 games in all competitions last season. He's the first player that won the Golden Boot in the 3 main competitions, as in Bundesliga, DFB Pokal / Domestic Cup and Champions League, and also won the competition. Ronaldo, that's something, Ronaldo and Messi never achieved. So he is the clear favorite this year. But in saying that, I also know how the FIFA award works. There's 4 voting panels. One is the coaches and captains of the national teams. One is the journalists. And another one is the fans. So, the fans worldwide, as much as they appreciate, I think, Robert Lewandowski, there's still a lot of fans of Messi and Ronaldo in there. So, and you know how it is with fan bias. They can see Lewandowski having this outstanding season, but they will still vote for Ronaldo just because they want Ronaldo or Messi to win another of these prizes. So in the end, it might be closer than we think, but I think he has to win it this year.
Yeah, I think that fan voting poll is definitely not one of my favorites. If we can just look closer to home, with when Oscarine Masaluke was nominated for the Puskas Award, but didn't win the goal of the season, which is almost incredible if you think about it. Just to close off.
He should have.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go
he
ahead.
Should have even won the Puskas Award. I know you're an Arsenal fan and Giroud won it for a scorpion kick. But I think also, that was rigged by Arsenal fans. When have you ever heard of a goalkeeper scoring a goal in the last minute with a bicycle kick? I mean, that's something we'll never hear or see again. So how he didn't win that year is still beyond me.
Yeah, most definitely. I can't even argue with that. David, just to close off, if there's a list of players you'd still like to, a bucket list, so to speak, players you'd like to interview still in your career, who's top of that list? You can name a few players if you want, and maybe just give us a small reason why.
Obviously with Messi and Ronaldo dominating the headlines so much, I would really love to speak to either of the two. I don't know if I can achieve that in my lifetime, because it's so difficult to get to them. We've tried to contact Barcelona and Real when Ronaldo was still there, but their interview schedules are so full. And we from South Africa, I mean, we are the biggest football publication in Africa, but we're still a lot further away from those guys from European football than your big publications in Europe. So it's always going to be a challenge. Personally, I'd like to speak to Michael Ballack, one of my Leverkusen heroes. Because he was there in that season when Leverkusen missed out on three trophies. One of the worst years for me as a fan. But I just admire him. He was such a classy player. And then there's many others that I'd like to speak to. Because that's always something special. When you can speak to the players. I mean, it's not your day-to-day work where we do stories on breaking news or on games and so on. But whenever you have the opportunity to speak to a player to get their mind on a game or on their experience, that's what makes the job so nice and so rewarding. You see them on TV or you've grown up and they were your childhood heroes, and then now you have the chance to engage with them, and that's really something that I've grown to appreciate, about being a football journalist / editor.
Yeah, well, I hope those interviews come in the very near future. David, thanks for sharing your story. It's really inspirational and fascinating, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Thanks, Abby. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Cheers. In next week's episode, I'll be joined by another prominent name in South African football as we review the year that was 2020. If you have any questions or things you'd like to discuss on Disky Discussions, please hit me up at AB_Basson on Twitter or on Instagram. Stay safe, subscribe, aware.